Given our natural jewel, the sun, especially in the Northern Cape, so Northern Cape, it's fairly in advance in terms of development, like many other provinces in terms of solar and nuclear energy. So, for future purposes and references, the investment interest from the G20 countries into South Africa to assist financially, it's a critical positive. And then, coming to the Northern Cape, one of the speakers have said that some assets are not underground. In Northern Cape, we are the jewel, Honorable Minister, in terms of our temperatures. The state said the minister make mention of how many hours, etc. If we went back, Honorable Minister for Education, for SKA development, I am in construction, I have been in construction there. And watch the space during our seasons. Northern Cape is the season of extreme. Now, for me, being then the only female who was involved in construction and still active in advising, we often reach on that side 50 degrees. Now, 50 degrees for the maximum hours, for 8 hours, 8 working hours. It's huge, it's immense. And to comprehend the capacity of energy saving out of that couple of hours, it's also a positive. I mean, at night, quite recently, last week, you know, it's been like 9 o'clock, 11 o'clock, and we still at like 28, 29 degrees. So, as someone also, one of the presenters also said, from the private sector's part, government cannot do it alone. But from an economic hand-glove approach, it should be government, it should be the communities, it should be investors. To prevent the disastrous, historically, Medupi and the other entity that has never considered that South Africa will grow and it will become a state whereby black capacity matters. Thank you.
Thank you. Just to follow up on that, Ntate Dingan. We have a new phenomenon in South Africa. Oh, almost out of time. It's called extortionists, construction mafia. So when you embark on these mega energy projects with international investors, and you have such issues, labor unrest, which is common in our country, plus now the new phenomenon of criminal elements, which seems to be uncurbed at this stage. How is it possible for us to succeed in this kind of rollout of mega energy projects?
Thank you very much, and good day to everyone. We have that problem in South Africa, whereby we've got the construction mafias. And for us to do away with such things in our industry, we need to look into the issues of security. For instance, we need to look at our national key points, whereby we secure the national key point, meaning our mega project, such as our substation, our power station, has to be looked into to say we need to guard against those people by reinforcing the security, having the national key point. All those things has to be guarded through the government and then through our minister. Number two, we can start doing what has been done before. As we were still coming up, we had some security guards, or we had some security companies that were owned by our government, who used to go around and patrol, who used to go and make sure that they secure all our infrastructures, especially on the mega project. Before, the tender or before the project has been issued, there would be people who will be responsible for such big project to see to it that people in our communities, because there are people who are taking advantage of now. If you coming from another province or you coming from another area, coming to do such big project, they want to come out and make as if they are the ones who are going to secure or give you security, while else they are the construction mafias. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Program Director, I just have to ask this last question to Ms. Khuche Moleshe, and then we close the panel. Ms. Moleshe, there has been a positive report on the contribution of the IPPs towards the alleviation of load shedding. So the renewable energy programs that were rolled out at the different bid windows seem to have contributed, among other things, to combating load shedding. Now, if you can hear us online, would you say, whilst we have seen improvement in load shedding, has these IPPs really trickled down to benefiting local industry? Because there's always the complaints that most of this money is going overseas anyway. Of course, we get electricity ultimately, but how much of it remains in the country? Is that a concern? Is that a genuine concern, Rusha?
Thank you, Prof. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. From the perspective of load shedding, I think the contribution what has contributed to load shedding in South Africa has been obviously improvements in terms of the Eskom fleet, in terms of performance. Yes, there is renewable energy in the system, but it's relatively low to be able to contribute to supplying the whole demand in the country. In terms of localization and the participation thereof, we must remember that there are limitations. What do I see? Double proof myself. There are limitations in terms of what entities from the renewable energy projects can do in terms of localization. I will give an example. In the wind industry, you have over 70% of the total project costs coming in as imports for the large-scale infrastructure. For instance, a wind project, the biggest components will be the turbines, will be this big infrastructure. That is imported. So what you can contribute in terms of the local perspective is from a balance of plant perspective, which is really civils, infrastructure, some electricity connections. So there has not been really a significant impact because manufacturing takes place outside of the country, and the big components come outside of the country. The big entities that control these supply chains tend to control who they can subcontract to. So it's not easy to just give over to a local entity. So I know that this has been overplayed in terms of what can happen, but that is really the reality.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Moleshe. That's all the time we had today. So, colleagues, can we thank our panel for the contribution? And I wish we had more time, but thank you very much, and we can stop it here.
It is designed the other way around. This time, men sing for
Thank
their
you so
women.
much. Thank you so much, Prof, and the panel for that informative and engaging discussion. And I think when we look at, if we're speaking to energy diversity and we don't speak of the gains that we have made, it's going to almost seem as if it's a futile process that we are doing. But a lot of work has gone in, and really, thank you to the Minister of Electricity and Energy and your collective. I know it's not a one-man solution, but thank you to yourself and the leadership that you've been able to provide and to enable people of the country to actually have hope that there is light at the end of the tunnel and that the solution is one that needs all of us to chip in. It needs all of us to engage. It needs all of us to be honest and reflective in our role in what we've played in terms of the wastage and everything else that has happened. We're going to move on to our next session before lunch. This is the last session. I've had a number of people speak to me about being hungry. So I can confirm that this is the last session before lunch. And after lunch, a few of the ministers are going to have to leave us because they've got other engagement and programs. But those that will remain, we will appreciate that as well. The next session that we're having will be chaired or moderated by Dr. Mimi Mokolele. Dr. Mimi, are you here? Indication, show of hand. Thank you so much. And as she comes up, can I request that the panelists that she will be in the discussion with also make their way up? For the sake of time, we've got Prof. Lenkubala. We have got Dr. Tulani Dlamini. We have got Tisetu Muhlomi from the University of Tshwane. We have got Mpopi Kube, the founder of One Lineage AI. And then we've got Prof. Murarang. Can I please humbly ask that the panelists make their way up so that the moderator does not need to call them up? And as the panelists make their way up, moderator, I know that the CEO of PBF spoke earlier on about just how encouraging it is to see not only young people but also women at the forefront of these conversations and guiding these conversations. So I'd like to hand over to you to demonstrate the power of Imbokodo and what can be achieved if Imbokodo is at the helm. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I think we were supposed to have a panel of 5 people, but one of our panelists is somewhere, maybe smoking, but it's fine since we have 15 minutes. So I think for the sake of time, let me start by thanking the organizers of the event for inviting us and for gracing us with a platform to discuss some of the issues that our Deputy Minister has already highlighted in the higher education system. So I think, let me start with Professor Puleng. That's the first question that I'm going to ask you. I know you're not sitting according to, arrangements, but we will go with the flow. This timer is giving me anxiety. So, Prof. Puleng, in South Africa, we've got about 26 universities, and these are just public universities, and we've got a lot of TVETs and a lot of universities of technology and so forth. But there seems to be some kind of competition amongst the universities in terms of innovation and collaboration, and that might be brought about because of inequality and because of lack of funding and so forth. So how do we tackle that challenge and make sure that the universities actually collaborate with one another instead of competing with one another, and address the key issues that South Africa is facing, such as poverty, inequality, and of course, unemployment rate?
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I heard my name was a tongue twister. It shouldn't be. I'm Puleng Linkabula, not Linka. It was something else. Let me thank the opportunity. I'm honored to be here. And I want to thank the Minister of Higher Education, Dr. Nkabane, for raising the questions that are important about how do we optimize and propel universities as sites of excellence, of innovation, of creativity, and of resourcing our society with knowledge to advance science, to advance human capabilities, but also to optimize talent and change our country. And I think the idea of collaboration is quite important. It requires nurturing, but it's not only collaboration between universities. It should be collaboration with the TVET education system, as well as basic education. It also should be collaboration with the science councils. I'm very happy to be sitting with my brother, Dr. Dlamini, who's leading a science council. It should also be with industry, as well as civic society organizations. And I think one of the limitations of our country is that industry is often not entwined with the research and scientific agenda of these 26 public universities. And therefore, that's the one point that has to be pivoted. The second aspect is that competition as a university is quite important. It allows and propels ingenuity or creativity, and it must be nurtured, but not competition that is indifferent to collaboration and cooperation. If you think about it, we've been talking about energy, we've been talking about the place of South Africa in innovation system in the world, we've been talking about the battery. For instance, the minister talked about the battery. South Africa has multiple inventions that have become global inventions or resources to inventions, but there have also been missed opportunities on innovation. If you remember, universities, including that my colleague who was moderating an earlier session leads, Venda, Northwest, UCT, and Stellenbosch, were participating in the creation of Joule. If you remember, Joule was the EVA car. And it could have been successful if commercialization and investment in commercialization had taken place. So we have those missed inventive opportunities that require our attention in terms of funding, in terms of enhancing collaboration with industry and public sector, and also in terms of recognizing that South African universities are competitive and are amongst the best. We often talk about Harvard, Oxford, but we forget that the sites of excellence are already dominant within our country. And I would like us to now start talking about South African universities as anchors of the socio-transformation, economic, political, environmental of the country. I'd be excited if that's the discourse that we're engaged in. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Prof. So I think then your answer will lead me now to Dr. Dlamini. Looking at research and development investments, when we're looking at China, China has the fastest growing economy in the world currently. And Africa has a population of about 1.4 billion people, and from that 70% is young people. So meaning that Africa has a lot of resources in terms of natural resources, as our ministers already showed in their presentations and their keynotes, and we also have human resources. So how do we ensure that we increase our R&D investments in the strategic sectors that we can foresee that will be driving the economy of the world or the global economy? How do we increase that, and how do we channel it in the right, I guess, industries?
For the question, and thank you also to the organizers of this event for inviting the CSIR to be part of this dialogue. I think you raise a very pertinent question about the level at which we are investing in research, development, and innovation as a country, which I think has already been raised by the Prof here. You know, at the turn of the century, we set ourselves a goal as South Africa that by 2009, we wish to increase our investment in research, development, and innovation as measured through an index called the gross expenditure of R&D as a percentage of GDP to 1%. That figure was further refined to 1.5%. Now, the sad reality though is that as we sit today, our investment in research, development, and innovation as a percentage of GDP sits at 0.62%. So we haven't met the goal that we've set for ourselves. Now I'm raising this because key to the issue of seeing significant improvement in terms of outcomes and impact of our investment in the research, development, and innovation is about ensuring that we increase the level of investment, particularly in efforts that are focused on the commercialization of the knowledge and the intellectual property that is generated by universities and by science councils like ourselves. I think the Treasury General of the ANC earlier on mentioned that we need to see more translation of knowledge into impact. That's not happening at the level that it ought to happen. Of course, that then has an impact in terms of our competitiveness as a country, as well as on our ability to address the issues that we've been talking about today of inequality, of poverty and unemployment. Because as we all know, the world over, the creation of small and medium enterprises is key to economic development, to job creation. And that ought to be underpinned by locally developed intellectual property. So that's a key issue that we need to address. But linked to this point is, perhaps from our own experience, not enough appetite by the state to tap into the intellectual property that is generated by institutions like the CSIR. I think that becomes, in our view, a key enabler for us to see a significant difference in terms of growing the economy, in terms of creating jobs, but also in terms of course, you know, the snowballing and the effect of then creating more opportunities for investment in research, development, and innovation. So those are some of the issues that we need to address, in my view, to be able to see a significant improvement in terms of these outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Dlamini. Then let me move on to Ms. Mpopi. Unemployment rate in South Africa, or youth unemployment rate, is more than 50%, and that is concerning. I was one of the unemployed youth, and I still feel unemployed even though I'm employed. It feels like something that is not far from where I come from. So when we're looking at SMMEs, they play a pivotal role in terms of hiring or giving the graduates skills that are needed to enter the industry, right? And to play like key roles in the industry. So how do you see collaboration between SMMEs, industry, government, and as well as universities for innovation, to drive innovation and to make sure that the pipeline from the universities to industry is actually speaking to the skills that are needed in those industries? How do we bridge that gap, and how do we forge meaningful collaborations between all those entities that I just counted?
Thank you. So we ourselves are a small business, but in addition, we work with small businesses. And one of the biggest challenges that we find is remaining relevant in the evolution of what's happening, particularly in the technology space as a small business. Now, this affects the business itself, but it also speaks to the resources that are required in the small business. Formal education is, of course, important, particularly university education. But what we're finding is when we start to help our small businesses to keep up to date on issues such as AI, the audience that you're looking to attract, which is the resources that you need, aren't necessarily graduates. And this is because it evolves so quickly that the manner in which the young people that we find and incorporate into these businesses learn is not necessarily through mainstream education. So our goal is to, one, democratize access to education. There is a role, of course, for graduates. There is a role for university degrees. But we believe there's a bigger need for how it is that we make education relevant and applicable for the young people. So how do we learn quickly and apply that quickly in the environments in which it's required, particularly for small businesses, so that we are both creating jobs for young, bright individuals that can't necessarily go through a 4-year education, but do acquire skills around AI, cloud adoption, and other topics that are not necessarily accessible to the small businesses, and then plugging them into those businesses so that we work quicker, faster, more efficiently to remain relevant in the evolution that's happening. So we believe it's dual. We believe there's the role of what do we do with our graduates in helping them acquire these skills, but more importantly, what would we do with the individuals that weren't able to go to university, but are still able to acquire those skills that are required to be plugged into the small businesses? So we find that things like biometric identification, facial recognition, other technologies that are hindering our small businesses to stay relevant, we're still able to educate young individuals and plug them into these businesses so that they gain skills, but also our small businesses keep up to date with what's happening around them.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And last but not least, Prof. Muranga, I think I'm going to phrase your question in a sense that it looks at the continent of Africa. We have 54 countries in Africa. I heard someone saying 55, so 54, 55, but in Africa, we are mainly consumers of innovation and consumers of technology. And you have led the Banana Industrial Research and Development Center successfully for years. So how do we become the supply of innovation, the supply of technology, and the demand? How do we play that role in the global community instead of us? I mean, she just mentioned cloud. We use things such as Zoom, Teams, and so forth, but all of these AI tools are mainly exported to us. How do we now become in the forefront?
Yeah, thank you very much. I want to say, importing the right technology, there's nothing wrong with it. Because also have to remember that behind some of these technology are the African minds that we have inadvertently exported to Europe through brain drain. Many of our young men and women who went under aid to study are behind most of these technologies. The most important thing is that we have to know what is strategic for us to import and how do we apply that technology to add value to what we have, so that we can create a greater resource for the markets and then be in a position to export it. Just to give an example of my experience, I went to Germany and did a lot of in-depth studies on the science and technology of starches, applying what they had done with their starches to the banana, which nobody thought had starch. Okay. And after that, we have applied the same technologies to transform a hitherto non-commercial food into the commercial world, such that we have been able to transform the banana flour to a level where it becomes a prebiotic, and which is going to make it a first-class ingredient next to what they call superfoods. So I think that the issue is not that we're going to reinvent every technology, but how do we strategically cause technology transfer to apply to what is critical within our environment so that we can be able to add value to it and transfer it to the marketplace. And I think what is also important is that indeed we should look at the landscape in Africa. We should not only look to Europe or to China, we should really increase the technology transfer within the African region.
Okay, thank you so much for that answer. And I feel like I followed my minister quite well. I think Minister Mantashe would be very proud. I kept to the time, and this is the end of our session, unfortunately. And we have about 32 seconds, so I don't think I should do anything with that 32 seconds, but to just thank our panelists, and let's give them a round of applause. For any other questions, please contact them directly. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much to the panel. I know that I had promised lunch immediately after this last session. The kitchen is indicating that they'll be ready by 1. So I just ask that you sort of bear with us. We do apologize for that. So as a result, we are also awaiting Minister Creasy, Minister of Transport, who's going to be here any moment now to be able to deliver on her topic. However, at the moment, I'd like us to take the next session, which is a session that we'd missed earlier on because the moderator was not available. Just trying to check if Avuyile is here. Avuyile has arrived. Moderator, as you make your way up, the session is going to be looking at harnessing unity in action, maximizing the potential of mineral and petroleum resources for a stronger future. I think this is up your alley, so you need no assistance with that. I'm going to ask that you just call up your panelists as well, introduce them, so that we've given you 15 minutes. Then you can take a question.
15 minutes for everything. Thank you very much. My name is Avuyile Qabadia. I have Mr. Thabo Moloto over here, and Ms. Mukhale, the queen from one of the chieftaincies in the Northwest. Northwest is one of the PGM belt in South Africa. She's here, 30 years of age. I also have Mr. Peter Pevron, who is a trade representative from one of our G20 countries, the Republic of Russia. I'm Avuyile, as it has been said. I've worked in the minerals industry as an economist at Implants, and I've worked as a chief economist at the Department of Mineral Resources. I hold Masters of Commerce from one of our G20 countries, China. I lead the Economic Transformation Subcommittee of the ANC Youth League in the NEC. Our panel is quite very interesting, and as you have seen, that majority of the ministers that were picked by PBF are ministers that seeks to promote sustainable development goals. As you know, that we are chairing a very critical a group of countries that are critical, the G20 countries that are very critical to achievement of those sustainable development goals. As you have seen, Minister of Water, Minister of Petroleums, Minister of Higher Education, very important sector to develop a human capital to actually achieve those other very important sustainable development goals. So I think that's very critical And I think I must say one few things before I ask questions to my panelists, which is very critical to what we're celebrating, the 113 years of the existence of the African National Congress, which I think I need to share in this forum that we've seen as an achievement of the African National Congress in the last 13 years, which is that of human development, in particular young people. I'm one of young people who started for free from NSFAS, as Dr. Ngabane has said. She's responsible for that department that gives away funds for us as young people to start. I started there, and I also benefited from one of the programs she talked about of the Chinese government and South Africa, where they take us to study abroad. And I think it's one of the very critical intervention of the South African government, which is the African National Congress, over the past 13 years. And it's not only me, there are many other young people who benefited out of this particular program. And those young people I've seen recently, the ANC is not only showcasing them when it's campaigning, it's putting them in strategic positions so that they advance and develop these particular sustainable goals that I'm talking about. I think that is very important for me to start with before I move to my question. I hope my panelists are ready. I apologize for what happened. I was going to the restroom and apparently I was called. I will ask different questions based on your backgrounds. As you are a mining engineer who worked with mines underground, you are also an entrepreneur who's working with mines. I will ask questions related to that, and of course the policies that government has enabled to make sure that young women like yourselves, they own those businesses. And I will also ask a question about petroleums. I like the Gazprom history. Mr. Peter, if you can share with us how has been the formation of Gazprom and how has government benefited of Russia as a result of the formation of that particular petroleum company. I think the Minister of Petroleum and Resources in South Africa spoke about such, that we have a bill that was signed by the President of South Africa, which is the Upstream Petroleum Bill, that enabled our government to also develop a petroleum company. I want you to share the lessons that we can learn as South Africa, and on how then do we take good lessons to make sure that our petroleum company achieves the maximum benefit and it becomes an international company that is able to generate revenue for South Africa and to actually achieve that particular sovereign wealth fund. Mr. Peter, I will start with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for let me speak at this distinguished forum. And it is a very interesting question. The story of Gazprom started in the years of the Soviet Union, when, if you imagine a map of Russia, just in the middle of it, Soviet Union discovered vast gas fields, and it was necessary to extract gas and to deliver it to the users, to customers within the Soviet Union, and after that in Western Europe. There was a Ministry of Gas Industry that was created in 1972, and that ministry was the predecessor of Gazprom company, which was formed at the beginning of the 90s. And since then, Gazprom was the Russian gas monopolist, which extracts gas, which transports it through pipelines, and after that it sells it to Russian customers and to the customers mostly in Europe and now in China. But this is just one pattern of development of gas and oil industry in Russia. We can call it a state monopolist, 100% at the beginning state company which was undertaking such a technologically difficult entrepreneurship. On the other hand, there is oil industry in Russia, and we have about 10 private oil companies who extract, do the upstream, downstream, and sell oil throughout the world. But in Russia, we have a specialized company which manages oil pipelines. So it is a completely different type of organizing of gas and oil industry. Just on the contrary to the state monopolist Gazprom, we have quite a liberalized and quite a free market of about 10 big oil companies. And it must be added that in recent years there is a second gas company which was established in Russia. It is called Novatek. And this company is mostly engaged in construction of LNG plants. Most of them are situated in the northern part of Russia. If we have here 4,000 kilometers to South Pole, these plants are situated in the distance of 2,000 kilometers to the North Pole. So now there are two large gas companies in Russia, and I must admit that both of them have interest to the development of cooperation with South Africa. So I think that in the nearest future, we may see that there will be new contacts and I hope new contracts between Russian gas companies and South African companies. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Peter. Mr. Tabo, I want you to speak. There's a phenomenon that has been happening in South Africa. In fact, it's a continental phenomenon where there's an untapped potential, where we have resources which are not yet converted to reserves in the continent, in particular in South Africa. We saw how the share of the global exploration in South Africa has declined from the 5% that was there around 2003 to the less than 1% of the global share of the exploration budget in South Africa. And you saw that in 2022, South Africa developed actually an exploration strategy and an implementation plan to actually move to that 5%, to target to move to that 5% within the next 5 years. What is your view? How can we unlock that particular potential? How can we make sure that as we transition towards the minerals of the future and the energy, as the Minister Sputler talked about, how can we make sure that the value chain is beneficial to South Africa, and make sure that that particular beneficiation and reindustrialization that you talked about is unlocked with minerals that are recouped from the continent and South Africa? What can you do to increase that exploration spend?
No, thanks, Abuyele. First of all, thank you very much to yourself, PBF, for the invitation. I normally have a prefix when I have, conversations of this nature that, first of all, what comes before my name, Thabo Moloto, is the beneficiary of ANC policies that one would have never imagined that, there would be someone black, young, who would have an opportunity to be a managing director of a shaft sinking company in South Africa. And I think Minister Mantasi, has some fond memories of the company that I'm now leading, Shaft Sinkers, in his days in Velcom, where they used to call it Chow Sinkers. This is a very niche skill that you don't have too many people having in South Africa. So I thought I needed to make that point clear. But coming to the issue of exploration, I actually heard debates or discussions about mining which are very anecdotal in nature. And thanks to Minister Mantashe, that every time he responds to the media and in public forum, there's always facts and figures about this industry called mining. Because we always debate mining in buzzwords: sunrise industry, sunset industry, boom and bust of commodities, and so on and so forth. Now, let's talk facts and figures in terms of exploration. The sad reality of exploration is that South Africa, with all the mineral endowments that we often talk about, we contribute less than 1% of the global exploration expenditure. Less than 1%. That is a sad reality. These countries that are leading the pack in terms of exploration, you have Canada that spends over $1 billion a year on exploration. You have Australia that also spends over $1 billion a year on exploration. And you have South Africa that, to be precise, only contributes 0.48% of the global exploration fund. That is an anomaly for a country endowed with so much minerals. But let me come to the positive side. The positive side is that there is policies in place. You've mentioned the exploration strategy of South Africa. There's nothing more exciting to have policies that you see in real time being implemented. This policy on exploration is actually anchored on 3 key pillars. One is to make sure that we have geoscientific data being made available easily. 2 is to have improvements on the licensing regime. And 3 is to make sure that we promote junior mining investment in the country. On all these 3 fronts, there are practical things that are happening. There's a practical expression in terms of making sure that we have geoscience data. There's a practical expression in terms of making sure that we invest in the junior mining sector, with the recent 400 million rands being made available by the government to encourage or to assist junior miners with exploration. But my view is that that is not enough. For us to reach that 5% target, which we said by now we should spend about $0.9 million, we are way too far from that. We need to amplify, we need to intensify on exploration, because there is no future of mining without exploration. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Lord. The last one Chair, is on the Queen from Northwest. I want you to talk about how the policies of government has helped you as someone who is a community that is hosting these big corporations, the mining companies, like is in Northwest. How has been the MPRDA and SLPs been beneficiary to people like you as a young woman who's in that community? How have you benefited? Is there anything that government can do? Are DDMs, district development models, where government is interacting with community to outline these programs, helping you as a beneficiary or as a host community? Because oftentimes we've seen that in Africa, it's said that these corporations, they don't leave impact in communities. How has been your experience with your company as someone who's working in the mines? And thank you so much.
Good day, everybody. I would literally like you to reintroduce me again. Just for a second.
This is Ms. Ntabeleng Mogale. She owns Amani
Liberty Mining.
Amani Mining that is having yellow plant equipment. It provides services to the mines. That's her company that she's owning. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Even if you didn't do what I asked you to do. That was in the first introduction, though. Based on everything that you've been saying, I would literally like to say I've got a regular visitor who comes to my province almost every time, who's Minister Gwede. You probably know me. We've been attending seminars of mining all the time. You come in to encourage us as to do things right. You're fighting illegal minings, and we're part of you, we support you. And as people that are actually part of the mining sectors, we need to do things accordingly. And also, especially as we young black people, to be able to get what we want, there should be things that needs to be provided in our provinces, especially in our province, because I'm from Northwest, where everybody's actually happening, where all the minerals are, where all the mines are. So that's basically where we need more help, basically from the government, to actually look into that and get to help us accumulate what we want, especially when it comes to illegal mining, for people to actually know the importance of having mining rights and getting to actually mine legally in all aspects. Based on time and looking at Mr. Moderator, looking at it again, I'm not gonna say much, but I can say Speaker, who's this? Parks actually initiated and spoke much about what I literally wanted to talk about, which is like commodities, how to move it, and stuff like that, especially from country to country. As we all know that we've got commodities in Zim, which is your concentrate that has higher quantity than the one that we have in South Africa. So I'm assuming I'm not just gonna dwell much into that, but say if there's any question that I can quickly answer, you can just ask.
I was checking, how have you been benefiting in terms of
Okay,
the
I've
policy?
been benefiting, that being that, like I said from the beginning, getting to be into the mining industry, obviously, it's really a roller coaster, especially for us women, getting to be dominating in the male-based industry. You need to make sure that you accommodate each and every step that you are acquired to actually have. When it comes to yellow plants, obviously it's something that nobody can just trust you with, especially when you know that getting to be on that tip, it's not really an easy journey. So based on my researchers, people that I actually associate myself with, getting to learn more into what really is going on into the mining, then getting to have a step ladder to actually do what I want to do, it actually has been something that really helped me to be where I am right now.
Thank you so much. I apologize, my panelists. The moderator has been on much, we've been out of time, and we apologize for that. Next time, we'll try and make sure that we take the conversation into other platforms and continue with the discussion. Thank you so much. Thanks, yeah.
Thank you very much. At the beginning of this morning session, I promised that we'll have a moment to engage. I'm very grateful that our ministers have stayed on. This is a sign that we have ministers who interact with people who are really committed to engage. When I grew up, I didn't even understand what a minister. I thought it was somebody who is not even reachable. I know when I was a GM generation, they always said the difference between God and the engineer is that God knows he's not an engineer. So, I always thought that, the difference between a minister and God is that God knows he's not a minister. But now I understand that the ministers know that they're not God either. So they have stayed on, left everything that is so important because this is very important for them. Can I open, please, I'm going to request that we try to give others a chance. Please don't give a speech. Be very succinct with your question. If we can have 4 hands up for this session, and then I'll go back to the other session, okay? And even, obviously this session, the minister spoke earlier, so the question will be for the panel as well as for the minister. Can we have that? Any question? Can be a question, can be a comment, it can be a suggestion. Okay. 1? Okay. Okay, for this session we have 1 question only. Please give him a mic. Thank you very much. Please introduce yourself and the sector you're coming from.
Good afternoon. My name is Jeffan Rowan, and I'm a delegate from UNISA. I just wanted to ask this question to the ministers. The biggest crisis that we have in the country is youth unemployment. You know, that's really the biggest crisis. And you know, when we had the energy crisis, the government established a special ministry, you know, to deal with that. And we can see the results and the impact, you know, of that decision. When it comes to youth unemployment, I just don't see the enthusiasm. I also don't see the energy. And if I can use the analogy used by the energy minister, I think, you know, in terms of steps to address this particular challenge, I would rate it at a level 6. So I'd like to hear from the ministers here, do they recognize the fact that this is the major crisis that we're facing in the country, and what are they doing about it? Thank you.
Thank you very much. There's a second question. Please, okay.
Thank you very much. Philani Mthembu from the Institute for Global Dialogue, which is a foreign policy think tank associated with the University of South Africa. Just basing on the conversation throughout the morning, thinking about energy, thinking about the extraction of minerals, but also thinking about our G20 priorities, I'm just sort of interested in what type of incentive structures, especially for the private sector, are there to actually move up the value chain. So when we're thinking about new technologies, when we are thinking about also renewable technologies, and when we think about critical minerals, Minister Parkstow mentioned the need for regional value chains. But what type of incentive structures, let's say, are private sector companies looking for to move up the value chain, rather than saying, look, we have the infrastructure to export, we extract, we export, why should we change our model? So I'm just interested in that type of incentive structure for the private sector. Thank you.
Guys, there's a mic in front of you.
Yeah, thank you. I was just waiting to be appointed. Oh, thank you so much.
Okay.
My name is Magdalene, my surname is Jacobs, and I am from Labour. I think the question that I wanted to pose was just basically dealing with the issue of the World Energy Trilemma Index, and more specifically dealing with the issue, and I think the Minister of Energy has raised the question, has raised the concern with regards to the affordability aspect, and more specifically down on the grassroots in terms of the affordability aspect. What is the plan? what is it that government can do to not just necessarily access, but also to have our people being able to afford electricity. And I understand the grants and the social aspect, but I'm also talking about all spheres right across the spectrum for all South Africans. Thank you.
Thank you. This one and then the last one.
Okay, greetings everyone. My name is Wonke Mapei, a director and a founder of a non-profit company, Elevator Ground. I'm coming from Gugulethu here in Cape Town. I have two questions. I will stick to them. One question is mainly around what are the plans in terms of improving township economy, in terms of the inclusivity growth, because we all know that unemployment is a major challenge we have in the country, and we have a growing entrepreneurs we have in our country, and we need to have a plan in terms of how are we going to grow our township economy in terms of empowering local entrepreneurs and many other aspiring entrepreneurs in terms of making sure that they grow the economy. So that is my first question. My second question, it goes to the higher education department, mainly around what is their turnaround strategy in terms of improving mainly the NSFAS faculty, because we mainly will know that we have challenges when it comes to NSFAS in terms of many young people who seem not to be funded by NSFAS, and many young people who seems to be rejected, and many other things that are happening. So what is the turnaround strategy in assisting in that? Thank you very much.
Thank you. The last question at the end.
Good afternoon. I am Ulindi Wenkabane. I am at the Department of Higher Education and Training. In the absence of the Minister of Water and Sanitation, maybe I'll just rephrase my question into a comment, which will then, as she spoke about the importance of water, but also the challenge that the department and municipalities has regarding non-revenue water, and also the crisis and the high rate of unemployment rate in South Africa, that we can maybe use this challenge of non-revenue water as an opportunity to combat the current youth unemployment crisis through training, awarenesses, especially training for further plumbers and other opportunities of smaller businesses. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to start with our guest from Uganda in responding to the issues of unemployment. Can I request? Yeah, I think, please give her a mic. I have just been to her exhibition stall outside, and in as much as we look up to government to create employment, here's a living example of how an ordinary citizen can use the resources of the country to create a job. I asked specifically, how many people does your organization employ? And they said to me, at this point it's 150, but we are going to expand significantly because we're starting to export. Can you just talk about your program, what you did, combining research and creating employment? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's okay.
I come from the research and development, really from university. Professors normally don't create employment. They create brains. So I have a very difficult story, because I think I'm the first professor to be directed by a politician to take what I'm doing to make it work for the economy. And as any professor, I rebelled first. I said, no, I don't trust you. Then I met another professor from where I'd got the knowledge, and he challenged me. He said, go back to your country and do what they're saying. If we get hold of what you have here, your country will remain poor. Let me start from there. The issue is that in Africa, we have the brains and the ability to solve most of our problems. The problem is that we are following models of people who have already gone far ahead to solve our problems. When I got the challenge, I realized that I have to identify what is my problem. My problem, first and foremost, is to ensure that the farmers that were our breadwinners, growing bananas every year, get economic sense out of the bananas. And I wasn't a farmer expert. But that's what I realized was the problem. So because I was not an expert in farming, I realized it has to be more than adding value to banana, it has to be adding value to the whole sector. And that's where the value chain in the banana industry started. I can't really exhaust it here, but what I want to tell you is that through the value chain undertaking, we're able to solve many problems. Most of the public universities in my countries are working in this industry. You know, most of the leading professors have got a stake. We have students doing different researches, demand-driven research to drive this industry. And in our forecast, we are looking at this industry employing over 50,000 people. And we did a projection recently, and we said, if we had 200 projects which become industries in the next 20 years, over 10 million people would be productively engaged. They are talking about 150 who are employed directly by us. These are the people who are really cream a la cream, who are coming from the universities and doing different stakes. Many of them will not have actually had a job, would have to go abroad to benchmark some other people's work. But now they are working and bring productive value into what we are doing. So in a nutshell, what I'm saying is that we need to make strategic investment in what would make everybody look up. Because Uganda has decided to do this, the village where we are resident as an industry, 100% everybody has got a permanent house now. 100% everybody has got electricity. 100% everybody has got water. On the luxury side, 30% everybody drives. 30%, actually 100% everybody has got a television in their houses. Just to show you the indicators of what happens when we invest strategically. This was a venture capital investment in the science, in the cream, a la cream of professors in our country. It looked laughable, but it is yielding a ripple effect. As I come here, we had one of the biggest investors in irrigation coming on board to work with this industry, to invest into water for production for the whole of the banana sector in the country. And this is going to raise the banana production from 5 to 10 metric tons to between 50 to 80 metric tons per hectare per year. And this will propel our industrial value to beyond 1 trillion every year to almost 5 times that. This is really what we are talking about. Our appetite here is that wheat we found that wheat is pegged to certain countries. We are saying Uganda can actually substitute African wheat requirement by 50% because we have been able to transform the banana flour into viably substituting wheat by up between 30 to 50%. And you don't guess that you are eating a modified bread.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I certainly saw the banana wheat outside. I want to get myself a packet, and then we won't be crying that there's war in Ukraine, we can't get wheat. We're going to have an African solution. Thank you so much. I will now hand over to Seth Fache to answer, to help us with the answers as well.
No, thank you very much. No, I want to answer the township and rural entrepreneurship question that was asked by a young fellow from Cape Town. I think the Department of Small Business, I think people have seen that how government is responding through the Minister of Small Business into those entrepreneurship programs. There is a program by Small Enterprise Development Finance Agency of Township and Rural Entrepreneurship Program called TRAP that always comes out for young people to apply and get the assistance. You have seen her going around giving assets to small enterprise. Also, that program is also out on call now for young people to also apply. It's called Asset Assist Program. So young people who are entrepreneurs in rural and township areas can apply. Government is responding to that. Even on the issue of Spaza Shop, government is putting in program to respond on how young people and, of course, people in the township and rural areas can come in to work in the Spaza Shop. You have seen the procurement bill that was ascended by President that sets aside for young people and small businesses to be active in the economic activity. So those are government programs that are assisting, and also the Small Business Amendment Bill, where government can intervene where there are unfair practices by big companies in small companies. You have seen there was a big tender by the Department of Basic Education. Department of Small Business intervened, and that tender was stopped because it didn't feature and allowed small businesses to participate in those. So those are some of government programs that they are doing to promote small businesses in township and rural areas. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other response from the minister? Thank you. Can I have the mic to the minister?
I'm not going to answer any question. I'm going to make the question more complex. The biggest crisis is youth unemployment, but the suggestion is that we must create a ministry of unemployment. I don't think it's a solution. It is pushing us to what led us to this crisis, creating a passive society, a society that waits for government to deliver everything, and a society doesn't have a responsibility to be actively engaging in finding solutions. So I think one of the things that we must begin to work on is attitude, and change the attitude of this passive visit. You know, I'm staying in a rural area in Kala. I spend a lot of time there. We grow maize there. But when we go to the villages and grow maize and invite young people to join in partnership, Avuile knows. They refuse. They refuse. We grow that maize, we produce it, we get good returns out of it. Young people don't want to be involved. And I went to one area, a mining area, Tubatse Valley. And these young people in Tubatse Valley say to me, we need jobs. I said to them, as they were hungry, I said to them, how can you be hungry when fruit in Tobacco Valley grow in the wild? Because we have created a society that is not participating. I think my own view is that let's do that, it will go a long way in addressing the problem. Number two, I think the statistic setup of South Africa is a bad system. If you go to Africa, I went to Tanzania recently, and I find everybody is selling something, anything and everything, everywhere, in every street, in every corner. We don't do that here. And when people walk into our country and do the same, the first anger is that foreign nationals take our business. We don't do it. That's the reality of the matter. We don't do it. And those foreign nationals don't take our business. They see a gap in what we are not doing. And I think if we can encourage participation of young people in economic activity and understand an economic activity in its broadest sense, we'll do much better. Statistics, for example, when you are in informal business, you are counted in the list of unemployed in South Africa. In other countries, you are counted as employed. And I think we should do a lot of things that we should do to reform the system and address the attitude. I want to leave it at that. My own view is that we've got the brains, we've got a very big youth citizenship that should participate. Molo systemato, molo systemato. And I went to Kendane. Young people don't want to participate. You produce maize there, they are not coming. I'm leaving it at that. The incentive for private sector to move up the value chain. I'm in mining. We talk about beneficiation. And the Youth League come to me every day and talk about beneficiation. We agree with them. We need to beneficiate. We looked into smelters that are mothballed. And we discovered there's one reason for that, is the energy problem. You can't beneficiate unless you have reliable energy, affordable energy, and energy that is available. And if we resolve that problem, which Minister Ramkhupa is doing, we'll go a long way in resolving the question of beneficiation. Many of those smelters will be opened, will add value, will not export chrome, will export chrome alloys, will export manganese alloys, and will increase the production of yellow cake out of uranium in NAFCO. So our view is that as government, we have a responsibility to ensure that there is reliable, available energy. Because if you don't have that energy, you are not going to do beneficiation. So the incentive is to, we're having a discussion with the sector, I must also say that. We look into all various options. One of them is commodity price linked electricity tariff. When the price of a commodity is high, you pay higher electricity tariff. When the price of electricity is low, you pay a lower tariff. Samango have done that, it works very well. Over a long time, that tariff cancels each other. Those are incentives that we should use. We have thrown to our colleagues that we must even consider giving tax holidays for beneficiation. Then there will be value addition happening if we're really serious about it. I want to leave it at that. The rest belong to my colleagues.
Thank you very much. I'll answer the question on affordability. So I think you are absolutely correct. I mean, when we talk of the energy trilemma, we talk of first energy access. And I did make the point that access has got two sub-elements. The first one is availability, and the second one is affordability. And the second leg of the trilemma is energy security, the ability to meet your current and projected future energy demand to support the growth of the economy And then the third one is issues around sustainability. So on the affordability, and the question is how do you make it affordable? So the first one is the downside of having a monopoly is that the primary price tariff driver of price of electricity in the country is Eskom. And by law, Eskom is required to be an efficient generator of electricity. So when NERSA, which is our independent regulator, examines the tariff application from Eskom, it looks at it or evaluates it against what they call allowable revenue. So there are about 3 primary drivers of that allowable revenue. The first one is what we call primary energy. It's about 42% of that. And what sits in the primary energy really, the main driver over the recent past years is the cost associated with running diesel, OCGTs, open cycle gas turbines. I'm sure you know that diesel is the most expensive fuel source. And what that has done is that as part of our quest to ensure that you attenuate load shedding, it's got other unintended effects in that the load factor or the amount of time that you are relying on OCGTs should be around 3 to 5%, but over the past 3 years, it has been 18%. Someone must carry that cost because you are buying that diesel. So it's a pass-through. So because of the inefficiencies and the underperformance of the installed fleet at Eskom. So how that is going to be abated going forward is that the improvement in the energy availability factor. So the more you are able to ensure that your installed fleet performs and you get more megawatts out of them, it means that there's less and less reliance on open cycle gas turbines. And that's why we make the point that there has been a saving, I think, up to December, from the 1st of April to December, of about 16 billion rands. So that 16 billion rands is 16 billion rands less on what will sit in the tariff. So as we improve the energy availability factor, we're confident by this time next year we'll be sitting at 70%. So we are not burning any diesel. So that's the one. The other driver is the return on assets. The general rule of thumb is that your ROA must sit at 10%. And of course, in there is the inefficiencies associated with how you constructed Medupi and Kusile. You know that we exceeded by the budget multifold. Someone must carry the cost. It's not for free. And that is found in the tariff application. So we think that for now, I mean, just to ensure that you make the tariff a bit more bearable, you move from the general rule of thumb that the ROA must be about 10%, the return on assets. We think that Eskom must be a bit modest, and it can be 3-4% going into the future. That's another way of bringing down the tariff applications, or the tariff rather. And then the third one is the legislative levers. So essentially what sits in that tariff is the cost of what we call, what is this, for emission carbon tax. That's a legal instrument. So you can choose to delay its application. And if you choose to delay that application, then that can, at least in the window of application, you can bring down that tariff. And then the last one is what municipalities are owing. I did show that municipalities owe about 90 billion rand to Eskom. Someone must pay for that money, for that debt. And that debt finds expression in the tariff application. So we'll find a way ourselves in government, outside Eskom, protect the interest of Eskom, its revenue streams, but make sure that municipalities are able to pay. So that's the one part. And that is, it's a benefit you give to everyone. The second way of intervention of dealing with the cost of electricity is in the reforms that they have been introduced. So we are moving away from a monopoly. Eskom won't be a monopoly on the generation side. It will still be a dominant player on the generation side. For foreseeable future, Eskom will be a dominant player for reasons that I've explained earlier on. But what that does is the introduction of competition. And then, as the classics will put it, is that once there's competition, there's likely going to be increased investments in R&D, and then because there's competition, the players in that space want to be the efficient and the cheapest provider of electricity. So if they reach those heights, then we think that there is going to be passed on to the end consumer, and it will be seen in the rate of increase of the tariff. So what is given is that the tariff will continue to go up, but will not go up at the current levels that we are seeing. I mean, in the past 10 years, that tariff has grown by about 600%. That's the benefit for everyone. And then the last one as I sit down is how do you protect the poor? So we introduced something revolutionary, the ANC government in 2001, to say, as part of the flow of the social wage. So the social wage is in two forms. It's in direct cash transfer, so that's money like the grant, money like, so old pension grants, that's money in your pocket, you get it, you receive real money. And then that's NSFAS, you don't receive money in your pocket, but you study for free. It's the 2 meals a day for those who are in education. The learners there, the kids, they don't get money in their pockets, but they get food. So those social wage comes in two forms. There's a real cash, the money, I decide how to use it, and the other one is non-cash transfers. So non-cash transfer. What we introduce on the non-cash transfers is a protection for the poor as part of the expansion of the social wage. 6 kiloliters of water for free, and then in 2001 we had introduced 50 kilowatts of electricity for free. And it has remained to this day, 23 years later, we still 50 kilowatts. So our view is that you must increase that quantum that you give to the poor. Of course, the counter argument is there's nothing for free, remember. Someone pays for it, for that which we refer to as free. But you can imagine that the poor's incomes are eroded by this increase because the share of this increase on their income is disproportionate. So what it means is that on the one hand, you give them a grant, on the other hand, you are removing that grant. So essentially, the net effect is zero. So if you want to see the high impact of that grant dispensation, then provide relief on the other hand. And we think that you can increase that. I will not mention the number. We have done our numbers. So we'll go to the ANC Lekgotla, we'll go to government Lekgotla. We have done the studies on what an average household consumes every month. We have a number. And we also know what that means from the fiscal's point of view. So I'm saying I can't raise it here because it's a debate we must still have in the NEC at the Lekgotla in government. But if the 7th administration has said one of its priorities is fighting poverty and reducing the cost of living, we think our proposal is compatible with that priority. Because we can't say one thing on the one hand and do something different on the other. So it's consistent with what we are saying. So we think we are on steady ground there. So that's the first increase, the quantum of free basic electricity. Then the other part is in the administration of that. So there are houses, so just to give you a sense, 10 million households in the country qualify for free basic electricity, but only 2 million are receiving. Why? What happens to that 8 million that must go to those households is because how the money gets to be transferred, you give it to a municipality, then the municipality pass it on. It's a non-conditional grant. But we know when it gets to the municipality, they've got other leakages. They've got other priorities. And then they use it for those priorities. It doesn't get to the intended per se. So we say technology allows us. Roll out smart meters, beginning of every month, do a configuration on the algorithm of that smart meter. Every month, every household gets that electricity for free. At least those that qualify. You will have determined who qualifies. The last one we'll be unveiling a project in Limpopo now, is done. Is to use a non-grid solution. You know, in the country, when you say want to give people to electricity, we're thinking transformers, we are thinking the ESCOM lines. No, technology allows that. We can simply roll out solar, battery, hybridization of generation. You don't need expensive backbone infrastructure. We're showcasing it there because I think they say seeing is believing. In my language, ba re ke makgaola ka o bona. So we are doing exactly that. So that when I say these things, you don't say this is madness. This is engineering science, and it's at full display in those villages. And then we'll roll it out across the country, and that's how you're going to address the issue of affordability and clean generation. I made a new presentation.
Now, thank you so much. Mine is around turnaround strategy as to improve NSFAS. I think maybe I need to start by reflecting on the legislative imperative where we derive our mandate as the PSET sector. The first one that I'm going to reflect on is the Constitution under Section 29 of the Republic of South Africa, which is the supreme law of the country. The second one is the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, of which as the department and the sector at large we adhere to. Our constitution indicates that everyone must have access to a free education and further education through reasonable measures. That's what I normally put in bold, to say reasonable measures, so that when we come up with interventions, then we take into cognizance of the financial capacity of the state in our interventions to make sure that everyone has access to the PSET sector. We then, hence everyone is aware that the board was dissolved in 2024, which is last year. And we identify the problem as the sector, and amongst the challenges that we established is that when we're analyzing the magnitude of the problem, is that the issues are around governance, administration, as well as management of the entire entity, which then required that there should be a restructuring of some sort. The board by that time was dissolved. The disbursements of funds were done by the middlemen, which were 4 fintech companies. Then we had to review our strategies by the time and come up with a solution to the problem that we're facing. What is happening currently as the turnaround strategy? We looked at the capacity internal as far as management and administration is concerned, which we do not have, the governance, no board, the executives, no executives. So what we've done last year, before the end of the year, we issued a gazette calling for nominations of board members, which is one of the interventions that we've put in place. And we received about close to 70 PhD candidates, or no, holders who applied to serve in those boards. We upped the game, or the bar, because the requirement was a master's degree. Because we want to make sure that we indeed attract or recruit people who are capable, who are going to assist us in turning around the institution, thereby addressing the challenges that we are facing in the sector. The process is in advanced stage. The minister appointed an independent panel to look at it. They've just finalized everything. The vetting has been done. Now we are still waiting to table the item for consideration in the cabinet. We're hoping anytime soon when the cabinet sits, it is indeed going to be considered. Then we'll be in a position to say we have a board in place and we are going to move with speed in turning around the institution and also filling those critical vacancies for executives as we move forward. What we need to appreciate is the fact that our government is doing very well. In 2024 financial year, we had a budget that has been set aside for NSFAS, for our young people to access PSET sector, of 39 billion. And the number of beneficiaries was sitting at 1.1 million. And we're hoping by this time around, the budget is going to be more. We're hoping that even the numbers, the beneficiaries are going to increase. But unfortunately, looking at the socio-economic challenges, and the increase of fees that is going to take place as we move forward, maybe the numbers are not going to be what we have expected. However, we are in a process of re-looking at the financial sustainability of the sector with various engagements with VCs. We're looking what to take into cognizance of the cost of living for the socio-economic challenges that the country is facing, and eventually, in the near future, we're going to come up with a sustainable solution to the problems that we are facing. But our intention is to make sure that we expand access and success in our PZ sector. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Lunch will be ready, but before that, there's a request to take pictures with the ministers, the Minister of Energy, people in the mining sector. Minister, we humbly request that those who are in the mining sector want to take the pictures with the minister must go on the left, on the right, and those who are in the education space who want to take pictures with the Minister of Education should go on my left-hand side. While we're doing that, there'll be a video on the project from Uganda that I really want you to encourage you to look at, to see how beneficiation can actually create jobs. Lunch is served. Thank you. Sorry, just to announce that when we come back at 2 o'clock, the Minister of Transport will be on the stage, and Metomato, our will.
Azikwazi nokushekela lokhu ukuqhenya ukuxosha iziqhenya ngobuntombi bayo usucela inamba phone yakunika usuqonile njalo lafela mthani aphela amasekomuntu
Apologies, delegates. Apologies, delegates. Apologies, delegates. Apologies, delegates. We are being requested by the photographers if everyone who's taking pictures can stand in front. you won't be able to hear because of the noise. Apologies, delegates. We are being requested by the photographers that if you are taking a picture, please can you stand against the backdrops and the banners because it helps with branding purposes, please.
You can't resist.
sesola Wangibeke sifuke wemama Tambo lam le Kentucky Sambrela sami Sambrela sam selama Situtu sani Sojike matireni Awe mama Welcome to baby Stop some samana
be with us.
Finish up before people come. Ka tumela thata mara e fa le go tlhagela ke background e ke ro ka I'm talking about yo ke ro ka no, it's perfect.
tla ba bua gore o na le kopo ka ntse ke bontsha le yana ntse ke bontsha ke re o ntse o